Hello again, everyone. Happy Monday to you. GoodMicWork back at you again, continuing on with the theme of quarantine TV here on the YouTube channel. Monday Night Raw just wrapped up right now on the USA Network, and we are now, into our fourth, I think, empty arena show. And tonight was kind of interesting. There was a little bit more build for WrestleMania, and we definitely have some things to talk about. But, at the same time, it's a very different looking business right now. So we'll get into as much as we can here. We'll talk about tonight's Raw. We'll talk about the WWE taping schedule for the rest of their shows through WrestleMania. And we'll also talk a little bit about WrestleMania and the current card and the lineup right now. And apparently, according to the news, they are going to be taping that this week. So we've got a 2-day WrestleMania, and it was taped. That doesn't even sound right coming out of my mouth, but strange times indeed. First of all, before we get going, I want to open this stream as I do every stream lately, and that is just checking on you guys, see how you're doing. I hope everybody is doing all right, dealing with this nonsense. We are all pretty much quarantined in our house, the entire globe. A lot of states now here in the country, here in the U.S., are mandating people just kind of stay home for 2 weeks at least, and then we'll kind of reevaluate. But, based on the way everything's going, 2 weeks is not going to be enough time to wrap this business up, and we're probably looking at months and months here. So it's getting a little bit scarier by the day in terms of what it's going to do to just everyone's livelihood, everyone's jobs, the economy, and whatnot. It's starting to look bleak, and I think just a complete, absolute shutdown for 3 months could cripple any economy in any country. So we really gotta, hopefully that this can, we can flatten the curve here, and we can start get testing, and we can start doing things to resume life as normal. Otherwise, it's going to be extremely difficult for a lot of people in this world. So wherever you are watching this or listening to this, I wish you the best. I hope everything is going all right for you, and I hope you're managing the situation as well as possible. As far as I go, you guys know my story. I am unemployed until the foreseeable future because of this, and I will be going back to work provided that we do get a handle on this thing, and I'm really hoping by June I can resume work and can have a kick-ass summer and get back to normal here. But there's really still a couple of weeks into this. There's no kind of end in sight. We still really don't know what's going to happen. We don't have any idea what direction this thing is going to go in. All we know is we're trying to stop the spread as best we can, and that's why everybody's staying home and just kind of hunkering down. So in the meantime, at least we've got the internet. At least we've got YouTube. We've got electricity. We've got all sorts of TV shows and all sorts of shit like that. And I can come up here and do live streams and talk to you guys. So we're not completely socially paralyzed here. We can at least talk to each other, through forms like this. But it sucks for just what we have to deal with. I mean, every commercial you see on TV, everything they're doing in that commercial and anything they're doing on a TV show are things that we can't currently do. Isn't that weird? You see a commercial about somebody just shopping through the grocery store, going somewhere, and they're like, that was nice when we could do those things. Tonight on Raw, they showed 2 previous matches from past pay-per-views from 2015 and 2018, and just looking at all the people in the crowd, you're like, oh, wow, that was nice back in the day when we could actually go to places. And it's going to get people pretty stir crazy here. I'm pretty calm for the most part, and I don't even mind being home a lot, mostly, and in regular life when there is no pandemic. So far I'm managing just fine, but I imagine 2 weeks from now I'm going to be, pulling, my invisible hair out here, because it's going to be, you're just going to really get sick of sitting in your house. And I think a lot of people are going to have it worse than me as far as, how they feel about this mentally and going completely out of their mind, just being in the house for so long. So I think the world is ready for this to wrap up, and hopefully, in a few months we can start resuming life as normal and getting back out there and doing things. But in the meantime, we just gotta adhere to the warnings and stay safe and continue to wash your hands and disinfect and all that stuff, and social distancing and quarantining and whatever, where they're recommending we do, as far as the, CDC and stuff. We need to do that and stop putting people at risk. So nothing is getting better as of yet. And this is probably my 4th or 5th stream now since this pandemic hit. And we're really not any closer to being out of the woods than we were a couple of weeks back. So we got a long road ahead of us still. And I hope you guys are just, managing and dealing with it as best you can. as far as tonight goes, should be an interesting episode. You know, we'll talk about Raw and we'll talk about WrestleMania, and that's pretty much going to be it. This is the third night in a row for live streams. I was up here on Saturday doing the Winged Eagle. We talked about all sorts of stuff, a 2-hour-long podcast, so check that out on my channel. It's also available on my website for download and all of the podcast sites. And then last night, I came up here for a really fun stream. It was my WrestleMania New Generation Era podcast. We talked about WrestleMania 10, 11, and 12 in 1994, 95, and 96. We talked about the matches, the storylines, what was going on in the world of wrestling in terms of news and between WWE and WCW, and everything surrounding basically the wrestling world during that time period, the first 3 WrestleManias after Hulk Hogan departed WWE in 1994. And we had a really fun discussion about that last night, and we really dug deep and dove deep into, you know, what was going on in the landscape of wrestling back in those times, and it was really fun to go back and do that. So you got a whole lot of me right now on the channel that you can always go back to and watch this week if you're bored. If you add this podcast to the last 2 episodes, you're probably looking at 5, 6, or maybe even 7 hours of pretty fresh GoodMicWork content. So that's all there available to you guys on YouTube. So I hope you guys are able to check that out if you get bored or whatnot. So anyway, like I said, we're going to get into Raw. We're going to discuss what they did on the show tonight and how WrestleMania is shaping up. And the first thing I want to say right away about Monday Night Raw is that I guess a lot of these segments were pre-taped, but also some of this was done live tonight, if I understood that correctly. And I think they have been taping all of the final Raws and SmackDowns. I think they did that over the weekend, or at least taped a good portion of that over the weekend, and they are going to do some live. So this taping schedule really makes things odd, because if they're going to tape WrestleMania on Wednesday and Thursday, you know, it's going to be weird for the go-home shows. You know, it's going to be weird for the post-WrestleMania shows, especially if they plan on taping those as well, which I think they plan on taping like the Raw and SmackDown after WrestleMania. They plan on doing that like next week or something. So it's going to be weird to, you know, basically have somebody out there, or they might be doing that tonight, excuse me, like if Drew McIntyre wins the title, he's going to have to film his victory celebration before he actually does the match and wins the belt. And it's just really kind of goofed up. And this used to be the norm back, 30 years ago when WWE would tape a lot of shit in advance. You'd see that in most cases. You'd see, some guys, celebrating a victory on Raw that was already pre-taped, but the pay-per-view match is coming up. So this used to be kind of a regular thing in the 80s and 90s. But in modern times, this is really crazy to have to kind of work in reverse like this. So, all of these tapings and the schedule of the tapings is going to really make things strange as far as, the order in which we are seeing them compared to the order in which they're taping them. So it's going to be an interesting week. And I did mention this last night, and I mentioned this on Saturday as well. In terms of WrestleMania, I want to say this right up front. Let's all do our best not to spoil anything. I'm sure there will be spoilers leaked, even though WWE is keeping a very tight-knit ship back there. I still think that there's going to get spoilers are going to get out. So just please be of the understanding that you're not special because you have an index finger that can click a mouse, and don't go around spoiling shit for people. If anybody wants to know what happened, they can do it, and they don't need your help. So you're not special if you read the spoilers. You don't have insider knowledge that none of us else do. None of the rest of us do. If we want to know the spoilers, we'll see them, and I may or may not look at them. Depends on my mood. Normally spoilers don't bother me, but I might want to try to stay surprised for WrestleMania, so I might not read them. But if for any reason I do read them, I will not share them with you guys at all. I will not put them on Twitter. I will not talk about them in the live streams or anything. So this is a spoiler-free zone as far as I'm concerned. So I would appreciate it if you wouldn't do that to the rest of us here in the chat who don't want to know the spoilers. So keep that in mind in the next couple of weeks as we're doing these streams, because we still are 2 weeks away from WrestleMania. So there's a ways to go here. And one thing I will say as well tonight, too, about Monday Night Raw, before I interrupted my own thought there, is that WWE took some advice, I think, from AEW. We praised the shit out of AEW. I did, for sure, on Saturday's podcast. What a great job they did this past Wednesday, when I thought going into it, WWE was going to be able to do the empty arena thing better than AEW. Holy shit, was I wrong. They got the right idea in AEW, and I credited them, for doing it better, but also recognizing what also helped them was the place that they were in. We talked a lot about that over the weekend. We talked about Daly's place, and that it's just a bigger arena, where in the Performance Center, it's basically a warehouse with a really low ceiling. And I talked about how on Saturday, how it really gave this like claustrophobic feel. I didn't like the feel of it. It was way too quiet. It was way too eerie. It was way too small. The environment just sucked. So when we saw what AEW did, I'm like, that's what WWE needs to do. They need to change some things up. AEW had some wrestlers in the front row, which greatly added to the atmosphere, because dead silence, complete stone cold silence is not good. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't come off on TV right. And it almost gives you that like community theater type of feel to it. So AEW doing that, I thought was a huge plus. And the angle of the hard camera on AEW was great. That was the first thing I said on Wednesday. I love the hard camera facing the ramp. That's how you do it. You know, and WWE should take notes. Well, guess what? They did. Raw opened up tonight with Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman in the ring, and they switched it around. No longer are you just staring at the empty chairs. They kind of added some stuff around the perimeter, and then the hard cam now faces right into the entrance way. So that's a step up. That looks a lot better, but I still don't think it looked as good as AEW's because they had more space, and WWE does not have more space. Now, word on the street is they are potentially taping other places. That's what they reported last week, is that WrestleMania would be taking place on 2 nights and from multiple locations, not just their Performance Center. Now, by multiple locations, I hope they don't mean Boneyard. We'll talk about Boneyard in a minute. And I hope that's not what they're talking about the multiple locations. I hope that they can go to Full Sail, or they can find somewhere else that just is a little bit bigger and a little bit more open, that might give the empty arena feel a little bit better of a look. Still no word on what their plans are, but I'm hoping that it looks better than this, even though I think WWE took a step in the right direction, switching the hard cam, facing the entrance ramp like that. I still don't think it's a very good atmosphere. It's just way too quiet. So they've got to do something about that. But, you know, with these mandates that, you know, the social distancing stuff and no more than 10 or more people can be in a gathering at one time, you know, they're already breaking that rule, I would assume, at the Performance Center anyway. So, you know, putting a few people in the front row, I don't think would kill them. I even pitched the idea of maybe doing a digital crowd, you know, and maybe you can have somebody's finger on the button that can press, you know, 1 for a cheer and 2 for a boo, and they can kind of control the crowd and react to whatever's going on in the ring, which sucks, because that's going to make WWE cheer the shit out of Roman and everything. But, you know, it might not be that outlandish of an idea, just based on how we all agree that this dead silence is just not working. It's not working at all. I don't like it. It's just, this sucks, man. This whole situation sucks. But at least WWE's made the effort to, you know, kind of change things up, and they absolutely stole that idea from AEW. Now, the fans got all excited. I mean, they were practically jizzing themselves over this. You know, here you got AEW. Look at them. They're a brand new company. They got a primetime TV show, 2-hour TV show on a weeknight. You know, they've got a steel ramp, they've got pyro, they've got jumbotrons, they've got theme songs, they've got an AEW shop commercial, which looks very much like a WWE shop commercial. They've got Jim Ross on commentary, and the world champion was in WWE 10 months ago, but WWE switching the hard cam, all of a sudden they copied him. You know, so I'm like, yeah, let's just kind of back off that. WWE definitely saw Dynamite and said, hey, that's a good idea. And they did the right thing. Did they copy him? Yes. But don't get your Vince McMahon boner I hate Vince McMahon boner too erect. It's not that big a deal. They actually did the right thing here. And if they wouldn't have done this, what would the fans have been saying? They would have been saying, God, these stubborn assholes, all they got to do is do what AEW did, and this would look so much better. These assholes in WWE, they're so stupid, they're so lazy, they're so incompetent. So they were damned if they do and damned if they don't here. So they made the adjustment. Now the fans are jumping up their ass for copying AEW. You know, when I just look at it as AEW had the right idea. You know, they had the right idea on Wednesday. That was a much better setup, and they made the empty arena feel bearable. You know, they made the empty arena theme and environment, you know, doable. It's still not great, but it's manageable now, and they were able to put on an entertaining show despite the fact that we're all fucked up here in this pandemic. So I hope WWE had their little notepad out and they were taking notes of everything AEW did right, you know, because they might have to borrow some of those ideas, at least, you know, 1 or 2 of them, the way Dynamite was handled and produced last week. So whatever they do for WrestleMania, I think it still has to look better than this. The first couple of Raws and SmackDowns I did not look very good. And then tonight they switched it up a little bit. It looked better. We had a great tag team match on the show. We actually had a few more in-ring matches than we're used to in the past couple of empty arena shows. So they did make some improvements here, but I still think they need to make more improvements. And this isn't gonna cut it for me. I'm gonna be so bummed out. Think about somebody like Drew McIntyre or anybody else that have been scheduled to have a big WrestleMania moment, a Drew McIntyre or a Roman Reigns or a Rhea Ripley or an Edge, guys like that we were really looking forward to maybe have this moment, and it's all fucked up now. And now they're going to have to do this in front of an empty arena. It just doesn't feel right, and it just sucks. But, like I've been mentioning all along on my podcast and my streams lately, there are no right or wrong answers here. We have never been through a pandemic before. And I think that WWE making the decisions that they are doing, they're just doing whatever they can. I understand why they're keeping WrestleMania going. I wish, they would wait and just do it, when everything subsides, but you don't really know. There's just too many unanswered questions. So now WWE is in this horrible position and this horrible situation of having to get WrestleMania out of the way. And that's never an attitude you want to have towards WrestleMania. But given the circumstances, it's kind of all you can really do. So they're going through with it. They're trying to continue business. And how you can fault them for that and jump up their ass and be a dick, I have no idea. These are very crazy times. And I think, for once, if we can just cut, WWE 5 seconds of slack, it's all we're really asking for here. If you absolutely must rub out your I hate Vince boner, just go do that shit in the other room. I don't want to hear it. It's pointless. Just to repeat what everybody else is saying, there ain't an original thought among you with that stuff whenever it comes to Vince. So I was dealing with that a little bit tonight on Twitter, as you can tell. So anyway, WWE made some adjustments tonight, but still not good enough in my opinion. They got to do more. So we'll see what they pull out of their ass here for WrestleMania and what they wind up taping here. I think it's Wednesday and Thursday, or is it Tuesday and Wednesday? I forgot what the taping schedule is, but anyway, they're doing a lot of this stuff this week, and we will get into the current WrestleMania card as it stands right now. Let me peek over here to the chat before we start rolling into the actual results of Raw. What's going on, How Weezy? Good to see you, man. Another day in this quarantine. Yep, thanks for the podcast, JC, Jonathan. You are my buddy. Daniel, Chaz, Beetle, Jesse, Rocksmith, Sky, Sir Joseph, Ryan Rhoda. Good to see you. All right, we got a good amount of people in here so far. Do me a big flavor and smash that thumbs up for me. I was really impressed with the audience we had yesterday for the New Generation podcast. I'm like, man, is anybody going to want to hear me come up here and talk about the year of 1995? So I was happy that we had some audience and we had some engagement in here last night. We had a really fun discussion about the good old days, 25 years ago, quarter of a century ago, was some of the stuff we were talking about. And I had a lot of deep and fond memories of all those times. And it was a hoot. Last night was a blast. So you guys did me a favor by keeping me occupied on a Sunday night when I'm stuck inside, and we were all able to hang out together. So it was a lot of fun. Check out that video if you have not yet already. Like I said, Brock Lesnar, Paul Heyman opened up the show, and this was one of the only segments, actually it probably wasn't very different at all, but Paul Heyman, just cut his promo and talked about Brock and hyped up the match with Drew McIntyre. And aside from Heyman's tone of voice, and one thing I noticed about all of the segments they did tonight on Raw in the empty arena, that is that they don't seem like, WWE doesn't seem like they're adjusting any of these segments due to the empty arena or due to the environment. I feel like most of these would have gone on exactly the same way if there was an arena of 10,000 fans there. Just the way everything was set up and the segments were structured. I feel like WWE did very little. They still go through with all of the entrances. The promos are still the same way, and then they're interrupted by somebody, and everything just still flows the same way, whether there is an audience there or not. And I think AEW on Wednesday did a little bit better job of kind of adapting to this, empty arena style. They just did things a little bit different. WWE, aside from just maybe the tone in the wrestler's voice when they're cutting a promo, because there aren't a bunch of people screaming in their face, aside from that, there was really nothing different about the way the whole show was set up. Promos are still the same, and they're still all just done the same. So I think WWE needs to at least try to recognize that they're in an empty arena and not try to ignore that, and at least maybe try to do some things to change it up, because sometimes it just looks strange. Sometimes I wonder why they even bother going through with the entrances and the entrance themes and the pyro and shit. I guess just for the benefit of the fans on TV, but we don't really need to see it. It looks silly. Kind of, and AEW is doing it too. But, you know, when you come out with your entrance and everything, I guess you just have to do that because it's 2020. But it's just looks weird, I guess, is the best way to put it. So I don't know, man. It's gonna be a weird couple of weeks. But as far as Brock Lesnar and Heyman go, typical Heyman stuff, just not as loud. Normally Heyman is yelling, and this time he was a little quieter, and that was the end of that. So Brock made it. Apparently, you know, there was some talk about him not being able to make it to WrestleMania because he lives out of the country and he might not be able to get in, but he's there, and I'm sure he's staying put in Orlando. He probably will not be going back home until all of his segments are taped and finished, even if he can go back home. And apparently all of the wrestlers are quarantined in one hotel. They're all there and maybe just being called over to, you know, come in when they're needed. And apparently all of the production staff that lives far away haven't been coming. Only like the Orlando-based agents like Road Dogg, Shawn Michaels, and other guys have been there working. So they really are running with quite the skeleton crew. And I was laughing too. I was getting some tweet, some dumb shit. Oh, actually, I think it was in here. I just deleted the comment because it's so dumb. You know, all these like WWE is lazy and they can do better than this. I'm like, motherfucker, they are so paralyzed by this thing. You know, the fans, it's so easy for them to sit on their big fat asses and judge them like this. You know, when they're in the middle of a pandemic and they're just trying to do what the best they can do. You know, whether you agree with it or not, you know, they're trying their best to make the best out of this situation. And if you don't like some of the decisions that they're making, you know, well, just, we're in a pandemic, give them a fucking break, you know? So I've seen just a lot of that, and everybody's been complaining about the replay matches and stuff. I'm like, the way these shows are set up, you know, on Raw, we don't want 3 hours of this. It's just going to get too old. So they opened up the show tonight. The very first match they showed was a great one. They rewound all the way back to 2015 and showed the triple threat match for the WWE title at the Royal Rumble between Brock Lesnar, John Cena, and Seth Rollins. Brock defending the title. That's one of the better triple threat matches in recent history in this company. So if they're going to show a match, that's a pretty good one to pick. You know, Brock's, you know, in the main event, he's defending the title against Drew. You need to showcase him and show one of his old matches. And I'm sure this week on Raw, or I'm sorry, on SmackDown, they'll do the same thing for Goldberg or Roman Reigns. Don't be surprised at all if you see that. So I'm okay with them showing replayed matches. WWE has like 60 years of footage they can draw from. It's not lazy. It's not a stupid idea. It makes absolute perfect sense, you know, to try to still give us a wrestling show and show us what it was like to have people in the crowd. I just think 3 hours of just empty arena matches, one on top of the other, could get a little bit depressing. And to burn off a little bit of time here by showing one of these matches, I don't really have a problem with it. As long as they show like a decent one. You know, on SmackDown, like last week or whatever, they showed that Elimination Chamber match again. You're like, oh, brother. But, you know, if they show some better stuff, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. You know, what would you want instead? Eric Rowan and No Way Jose in an empty arena match? That's what you want? You'd prefer that over a triple threat. Well, that's fucking stupid. So I don't really think that's a big deal, and I'm not going to use that as ammunition to jump up WWE's ass. They're doing what they got to do, you know what I mean? But it was a good match to replay, and they would show an even better one to close the show, which we'll talk about here in a minute. After that, they had AJ Styles and the OC cut a promo after the Rumble replay. They're on the stage there, and I had to use this as my thumbnail because it was so amazing. He actually showed on the Tron the video that The Undertaker and Michelle McCool put out on their Instagram or Twitter or whatever the fuck with that tiger, talking about the Save the Tigers. They're like in the pool and the tiger's there. You've seen this, right? So it's been all over. It's been making the rounds all week. We've all been laughing our asses off at it. And AJ like brings it, puts it on the Tron. So that's great. AJ did more Michelle McCool bashing, called Undertaker Mark again. So they really seem like they are going in this humanizing direction. But AJ is now claiming that he wants to bring the dead man out of the Undertaker. Like he wants the dead man to come back. He just sees the shell of his old self that just does whatever his wife tells him to do and is starting to lose his mind, and he wants to bring back the old Undertaker. So he challenged the Undertaker to a very special match. Their match is already set at WrestleMania, but AJ proposed a stipulation, and he says it, the tone that he says it in, he makes it sound like we all know what the F this is. He goes, I challenge you to a match that's in your wheelhouse, a boneyard match. What the fuck is a boneyard match? A boneyard match? I'm guessing it's like a graveyard match. Maybe it's a buried alive match in a grave or in a cemetery. That's, to me, what it sounds like it's going to be. And honestly, you know, that is smart to maybe do something like a final deletion or a Hardy compound fight, or the Wyatt family thing with the New Day. Something like that. If they're trying to do that, that changes it up. It gets it out of the empty arena, because AJ and the Undertaker in an empty arena, watching the Undertaker, kind of try to move around like that, it's going to be tough to watch. So this Boneyard match offers up some interesting scenarios, but it's just odd. So the way AJ said it, he acted like, oh yeah, Boneyard match, those are my favorite. What's your top 5 favorite Boneyard matches, guys? List them in order to me. So, that looks like it's one of the matches that's going to be from another location. So when we initially heard those rumors about WrestleMania being taped at more than one location, I'm wondering if they meant that. Now, I think I would love it if they would at least go to Full Sail, because it's a little bit bigger than the Performance Center. If they can go there to tape something, I think that would be great. And I'm also wondering too, do you guys think that, if WrestleMania is going to be Saturday and Sunday, do you think they're going to do all one show one day and then all the other show the other day, like SmackDown Saturday, Raw Sunday, or are they going to mix them all together? I think it would be better to mix them all together, but it might be easier for scheduling purposes to do it brand by brand. And if that's the case, that means no main event for Randy Orton and Edge. I was thinking that if they split everything up, Drew and Brock could main event one night, Orton and Edge could main event another, and you don't really need to have Roman and Goldberg main event, because their match is going to be 19 seconds, and it's probably going to suck. So I don't know. I don't know what the schedule is going to be like. I'm sure we'll hear a lot about that when the tapings happen, but this Boneyard match is weird. And I guess next week is probably, because next week will be the go home Raw, right? So next week we will probably get the rules to this thing. And like we talked about earlier, it's probably going to be some sort of a buried alive match, casket match, as Barry has said. Barry, what's going on, man? Yeah, when it comes to that, I actually mentioned that. We talked about that, I think, on Saturday. When it comes to WWE, like replaying old shows, I don't think you're going to see them go back very far. And because a lot of people are like, oh my God, they should play the Royal Rumble 1992, or they should play WrestleMania 17. And I'm like, they're not going to go that far back. I think they would rather show more modern stuff that might have some current WWE wrestlers on there. And I think if they go back too far, it's not really showcasing the identity that WWE currently is today. So that's why on ESPN you're seeing these replays of WrestleMania, which I didn't like their choices. Last night they ran WrestleMania 30. I didn't watch it on ESPN. We were doing the stream, but that was a great one. But this week they're doing WrestleMania 32, and then after that they're doing last year's WrestleMania, which I'd rather dump those two and do like 34 and 33 or 31. One in the last 5 years, 30, 31, 33, and 34 are the best ones. 32 and 35 are shit, but yet those are the ones WWE is choosing to air on ESPN. I guess they just want everybody to see Shane's big fall, but there's so much better stuff on those other WrestleManias. But I don't think they're going to go back any further, really, than 5, 6 years, maybe 7 years, something like that. I don't think they're going to be backtracking all the way back to the early 2000s or anything. It was a completely different time. But it would be fun. I mean, not going to say fun, but if something happened and this gets worse and then nobody is allowed to do anything, including WWE, they're not allowed to produce any TV shows, any new content at all, no matter how small it is, and they are just forbidden to do that. I'd be okay with just hitting the reset button and starting with episode 1 of Monday Night Raw this Monday, or next Monday on Raw from 1993, and just watch them all in order. We'll come up and do a review every week. It'll be a lot easier. Back then, the shows were an hour long from the Manhattan Center, and basically just start over and watch everything in order from the beginning until this whole situation gets resolved. But let's hope it doesn't get that far. But as far as like match replays go and stuff, it's not a big deal. Think about how bad these Raws have sucked. Prior to this pandemic hitting, what have we all been doing for most weeks? 9 out of 10 weeks, we are complaining about Raw, how boring it is, how shitty it is. If you ask me, if WWE decided last year that every week on Raw they're going to replay one classic match from the past, I'd still be fine with it, even with no pandemic, because Raw sucks. So what's the difference? It's like it's complaining for the sake of complaining, and that's just fucking dumb. We don't need to be doing that right now. It ain't the time for negativity. But based on what we've seen from Raw, they could have been doing this for months, and I would have been fine with it. Doesn't bother me at all in terms of the replays. But like I said, we did get some in-ring matches, and there was a great one Really good one. Tag team match was off the hook. Garza and Andrade teamed up to take on Cedric, Alexander, and Ricochet. They defeated them in a really good match. The only thing that sucked is there was some sort of a botch there at the end with the referee. He botched the 3 count or whatever there, and it didn't look very good, but they still got the victory, and the match was really exciting. So despite the ref botch or whoever's fault that was, it didn't take too much away from the match. It just kind of sucked that it happened. But Garza and Andrade were announced today to have to be booked for WrestleMania match as well. They're going to be challenging the Street Profits for the tag team titles. So that's weird. We thought all along Garza and Andrade and Rey and Humberto Carrillo were going to be involved in some sort of a 4-way for the title. It looks like they're just camping out, or Andrade's just camping out with that belt right now. He's just going to hold on to it. He's not going to be defending it, I guess, at WrestleMania. Instead, he's teaming up with Garza to get a title shot, and I'm wondering if that's going to be the beginning of some sort of a rift between Andrade, Garza, and Zelina. I almost have a feeling like she's going to be forced to choose or something between the two of them. There could be a miscommunication. They might not get along in the match. It might stick Zelina in the middle, and then there's going to be some sort of a turn, or somebody's going to get, screwed or whatnot. And I think this actually might be the beginning of a Garza and Andrade U.S. title feud. I think maybe Andrade might be on the verge of a face turn. I don't know. It's just a thought I had. Maybe Zelina sees a better product in Garza. She chooses to go with him, kicks Andrade to the curb, and then Garza challenges him for the title. Or maybe she does one of those things where she's in a neutral corner and she's just going to go with the winner. But part of me thinks, since this match kind of came out of left field, that it's going to lead to something else, and Street Profits are going to continue to be champs, and Garza and Andrade are going to have their own issues between the two. That's kind of what I think that's going to lead to, at least based on my observations. I don't know what y'all think about that, but the match was good, and it didn't even come off that bad. Street Profits also had a match, but I was walking around the house when it happened, and I didn't even catch their opponents. I'm assuming they're jobbers. I didn't recognize the dude that got pinned, so I think they were jobbers. So they kind of had to tune up, and during the Garza and Andrade match with Cedric and Ricochet, they were on commentary for that. So Street Profits had a pretty heavy presence on Raw, and right now, just based on their challengers at WrestleMania, I'd keep the belts on the Street Profits too. For a little while longer. They showed a replay of what was released on social media either yesterday or the day before, I can't remember, but R-Truth has thankfully regained the 24/7 title. So if WWE's trying to put everything in place, if they have to suspend business for a while, they need to put their titles with all the right people, with where they want them to be, so they can just kind of stop things for a while. So I'm really glad that Riddick Moss is not going to go down as like the longest running 24/7 champion in history. They do a little skit where he's running down his neighborhood, jogging with the belt around his waist. That's real smart. And a car comes pulling around the corner. There's a referee, I forget his name. Referee's driving, and Riddick sees what's happening. He's like, "No, you're not going to screw me." R-Truth jumps out of the trunk, comes up behind Riddick Moss, rolls him up, pins him for the title, and then he says, "Go back to football, Randy Moss." Hysterical. So congrats to R-Truth, who is just a national goddamn treasure, and I'm glad that he's once again 24/7 champion. That was fun. It was fun to see that. I think going out and jogging is one of the few things we're allowed to do right now. So to see that little segment was fun. They showed a replay of that on Raw, and that was great. So congrats to R-Truth. We also had a Shayna Baszler promo. She's in the ring with Charlie Caruso. Pretty funny, too. Shayna, one of the first things she says to Caruso, she's like, "What's wrong, Charlie? Are you scared? Are you scared I'm going to bite you?" And she's saying this to Charlie while wearing a Mike Tyson t-shirt. Shayna's the best. So Shayna starts to talk a little bit, but she's attacked from behind by Becky Lynch with a chair. They had the lights out for this, so they did change up a little bit there. I don't think the lights would be out if this was a regular Raw in front of an arena. So they did turn the lights down, which allowed Becky Lynch to sneak in there. But I still think the promo would have gone much the same if it was a regular Raw. I just think that maybe Shayna and Charlie wouldn't have been sitting in chairs. They would have been standing up, and it would have been in the ring, and then Becky would have just slid in from behind and attacked her with the chair. So she only gave her one chair shot. She didn't continue the assault. If I was her, I would have hammered her like a railroad spike with that chair. One chair shot, Becky Lynch's music plays, and she leaves, and that's all the build they really did here. So if that would have been in front of a live crowd, I don't think it would have been very good. the little segment between the two of them there. But I'm still, somewhat intrigued in the match. Right after that, Aleister Black killed some poor little jobber. He looked a lot like Kofi Kingston, like a young Kofi Kingston with short hair, same body style, same size, kind of wore like, he had yellow tights that really reminded me of like Kofi's Jamaican days, when he first came in. And Aleister kicked him with a black mass immediately and pinned him in about 10 seconds. So that was a super fast match. And not much to say about it. After that, we had Kevin Owens come out to the ring to call out Seth Rollins. He's waiting for Seth Rollins to approach him about his challenge, whatever they got going on at WrestleMania. Didn't Seth challenge Owens, and then Owens, he agreed, and then did he challenge something else? I forgot how the fuck even went. Anyway, Owens is in the ring. Seth comes out. Seth cuts a pretty good promo. He talked about how Owens was saying that, he paid his dues in this building and he's got a lot of memories of the Performance Center and NXT. And Seth was basically like, well, I never had those memories. I never performed here because I came in before this existed, and all of my blood, sweat, and tears and all of my hard work built this place. This is my house, is what he said to Kevin Owens. It was actually a really good promo. I liked it a lot. So they did more to build their issue at WrestleMania. And I can't remember off the top of my head now if they have a stipulation or not. Don't remember. But it was well done, I suppose. And if that would have had a live crowd, I would have been all right with it. Seth Rollins and Owens, WrestleMania. It's going to be a good match. I don't know how it can't be. And after that was kind of interesting because they then showed a second match replay, and this one they took from WrestleMania 34 in New Orleans, 2018. Charlotte versus Asuka. Oh, great. Now, that's a great match to show based on the fact that Charlotte has got a big match with Rhea Ripley. You want to show one of her greatest wins of all time. But boy, it is fun to relive the times that the fans ate their own poo, isn't it? I don't think fans are still over that loss, where I never even batted an eye at it. The Charlotte beating Asuka never bothered me for a half a second. But yet it threw the entire wrestling world into a tizzy, which I still will never understand. But showing that match again was cool because it was a good match. Just like, I know fans didn't like the outcome, but the match itself was good, just like the triple threat was earlier on. So I thought, in terms of choosing two matches to replay for Raw, I thought they picked two pretty good ones. They could have definitely picked worse, that's for sure. So we had to sit through that whole match, and I thought that was going to be the main event, but I completely forgot we did have Randy Orton coming out there, and Randy Orton was supposed to answer the challenge of Edge, who proposed a last man standing match. So Orton comes out there at the end, final segment of the night. He's on the stage. He accepts the challenge, goes on to talk about some of the things Edge said when he was shitting on Randy Orton, saying that you were handed everything because of who you are and you got everything just given to you. And Randy Orton is like, no, I didn't. He goes, I got handed the opportunity absolutely because of who I am. My dad is Bob Orton. My grandfather wrestled too. Of course I'm going to get opportunities, but I still had to make the best of those opportunities. And I kind of like the realism there because I've been saying that all along. The fans love to push this fucking brain dead narrative that the only reason, mind you, no other reasons other than this, that Charlotte gets pushed is because of who her dad is, which is just so fucking stupid. There are plenty of wrestlers that don't get pushed because of who their dad is. Look at Curtis Axel. Look at fucking Ted DiBiase. Look at Cody Rhodes. Look at so many examples of second generation wrestlers that don't automatically make it. They're not automatically given everything. They're automatically given opportunities, just like the Rock's daughter currently is, like Eddie Guerrero's daughter was. But they're not just going to put them out there if they suck and give them belts. That's not the way it works, so the fans really like to say those things about the wrestlers. Oh, Charlotte has blonde hair, so Vince is going to push her. That's so fucking ignorant and just plain not true. Dana Brooke has long hair. Where's her push? So I like that Randy Orton got into that a little bit and saying, yes, I got opportunities, but to say I was handed everything is wrong. I still had to win those matches. So there's a little bit of blending here between kayfabe and reality. Randy Orton is like, yes, Edge, I got those opportunities, but I still had to win the Intercontinental title. I still had to beat Mick Foley in a hardcore match. I still had to win the match that made me the youngest world heavyweight champion in history. I had to make good on those opportunities. I wasn't given them, even though he kind of was. You know who's going to be put over before, the match starts. So I thought it was a pretty good argument by Randy Orton, and it's something that resonated with me because I have to hear this shit from fans all the time. Oh, Charlotte just get this or that or whatever. I'm like, that's not really true. It may be true in one case couple of times, as far as like opportunities go, but you have to be good. You cannot be shit on a stick and expect to get world titles. It doesn't work that way regardless of who your mom and dad are. So it's just stupid. So I like the fact that Randy Orton brought that stuff up and kind of threw it in Edge's face. So again, it just sucks that there's no crowd here. There's no arena. There's not going to be 80,000 people to watch this match happen. I really feel for Edge. I cannot believe his return match is going to have to be in an environment like this, in a empty arena. And I'm hoping they get creative. It's a last man standing match, so they can go all over the Performance Center. They can go out in the street. They can do things. So hopefully they get a little bit creative to where it makes it, watchable and it's not the worst thing in the world. But, if it was up to me, I'd rather just have these guys in a normal WrestleMania in front of a bunch of fans doing their thing. It would have been so great. And I feel for Edge that he's just been robbed of that moment. I feel for, Rhea Ripley and Charlotte, who were robbed of their respective moment. Drew McIntyre, Roman Reigns, anybody else with a big match. It just sucks that, we're in this position. Absolutely sucks. But what can you do? All you can do is make the best of it. So that is pretty much your Raw in a nutshell. I ran through that in about 20 minutes there, but we'll talk more about WrestleMania. We'll get into the card here, and I'll answer some questions here in the chat. I don't think this is going to be a terribly long live stream. I expect it to be up here for probably an hour or so. Unlike last night where we went for about 2.5, and we went over 2 on Saturday as well. Exactly. Yeah, there's Daniel. Daniel, Daniel, I got to talk about your stat, by the way. That's my buddy Daniel from North Carolina. Bo Dallas is another excellent example. He's a really good example of just second-generation guys that WWE just doesn't feel like doing shit with, and there's been lots of cases like that. You remember a guy named Eric Watts? He sucked. So I think that just fans can be a little hypocritical and they don't know what the hell they're talking about sometimes. But anyway, Daniel, where's my phone? He texted me a really interesting stat. I've got a stat about Brock Lesnar that's going to blow y'all the fuck away. So he texted me this. I even screenshotted it and stuck it on Twitter. Where are we at here? Okay, so he says that Brock's 8 title reigns, I didn't even know Brock had 8 title reigns. Brock's 8 title reigns are 26 days away from being 4 years in their entirety. So all the days combined that Brock Lesnar has been champion almost equals 4 years. He then goes on to say it puts him 5th all time in total days as a WWE or Universal Champion. 5th all time. And if Brock Lesnar, this is a knock your socks off here. If Brock Lesnar holds the WWE or Universal title for 100 more days, he will surpass John Cena in days as champion. And it felt like John Cena was champion forever. He had that year-long run as well, just like Brock did. So Brock having 2 runs that, spanned almost a year each really helped him there. That's crazy. He says, I just realized that WWE has 51 champs in history. I would enjoy seeing you rank each wrestler as champ at some point. I've thought about doing that. Yeah, that would be a crazy countdown. I already know who my top 5 would be, but yeah, I should. That could be something to do in quarantine time. Rank all 51 WWE champions from best to worst. So we can do Jinder and then everybody else below him. Yeah, so yeah, Jinder clearly is the best champion ever. Either him or Vince, one or the other. So yeah, that could be an interesting thing too. But isn't that a crazy stat about Brock Lesnar that he's really been on top? I mean, he's been that dominant in WWE. He's going to go down in history as, he's putting up Bruno numbers. You have to go way back. You think about Bruno and Backlund, who had long runs. Bruno, Backlund, Hogan are the 3 big ones there. They held the belts for a long time, multiple years. Hogan held the belt from one Olympics to another. I mean, that's how long he held the belt, from 84 to 88, like that. So it's that's an interesting stat. Brock's continuing to cement his legacy, and I've always had Brock's back. I know fans hate Brock and shit. Brock's money, man. Brock always will be, and he's not to the point now where somebody like a Goldberg is, where I don't want to see him. I'll always be fine with seeing Brock. My only issue with Brock is when WWE does things like that, keep the belt on him for a year when he's not there. That gets annoying and that gets old. I will 100% admit that. But to go out there and say Brock sucks and he has no talent and nobody wants to see him, that's your anger overtaking the benefit of intellect. You just have to think about it. Brock is still very, 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 very good at what he does. He always has been. The dude's been a beast since he walked in the door, and he's a credible champion. And he's going to go down. Trust me, we're going to have a lot worse champions in history. You think about somebody in past history too. who'd you rather have as champion, The Miz or Brock Lesnar? I pick Brock, no matter how often he's on the show. I'll pick Brock over The Miz any day. And as we go on here in further years, and you look down 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, I guarantee you there will be fans, including the ones currently bitching at Brock Lesnar right now, that are going to miss Brock Lesnar. And you're already seeing that a little bit, just a little bit with John Cena. I have heard people say that they actually miss John Cena. I've seen those words on Twitter. Man, GoodMicWork, I hate to admit it, but I actually miss John Cena. That's what they say. And it's going to happen with Brock too. It happens with everybody. So no matter how angry you are at any wrestler, just you got to know that that's your own personal anger talking. There's really no logic backing it up. You're just mad. So in the future, I think people are going to appreciate the career of Brock Lesnar, even though a stat like that does kind of make you go, wow, I cannot believe he held the belt that long. And he did that during most of the majority of those title reigns came in his second run. His first couple of reigns were short. He beat Rock at Survivor Series, dropped it at, Brock at SummerSlam, dropped it at Survivor Series. Then he won it back at WrestleMania and then lost it in the summer. So his first couple of reigns there, I think he had like 3, and his first run didn't total that many days, and then he dropped the belt to Eddie in 2004, and then he was out the door. But his comeback here, man, he's had some gold around his waist a lot of those times, a long time since 2012. Man, interesting. So anyway, let's run through a little bit of the WrestleMania card. I don't have the whole thing written down here. I only have the matches I had off the top of my head. We'll start with Raw. Brock Lesnar defending the WWE title against Drew McIntyre. We talked about that. As of right now, I still hope that they crown Drew, but part of me wonders if the coronavirus is making WWE change their booking. Maybe they're like, well, we're so used to having the belt on Brock anyway, let's just keep it on him for now, because we might not get back to business as usual. Because what happens if they have to shut down Raw completely after WrestleMania and there are no more empty arena shows? Now you got Drew, a brand new guy as champion. They can't even capitalize off that momentum, and the glory of him being the new champion. Now they can't run shows at all. Maybe if WWE is thinking in their head, they might need to pause business. That's what I was saying earlier. They might want to put all these titles in nice, secure spots, like the 24/7 title with R-Truth, things like that. Get everything where they want it so they can kind of shut the lights off and then come back when they're ready, which makes me a little bit concerned about Drew McIntyre being a shoo-in to win the title. I thought he was before all this happened. If you would ask me the night after the Royal Rumble, I'm like, they got to put the belt on this guy. They cannot make the same mistake with him that they did with Braun Strowman or with Samoa Joe. Pull the trigger. But with the virus, I don't know, man. I don't think it's a guarantee at all that Drew McIntyre wins the belt. They might keep it on Brock because I think they really need to get it off Goldberg. Roman should beat Goldberg for that title and get that belt off of him and at least have that belt on a full-time wrestler, and you're not, entering the rest of this pandemic with the belt on 2 part-timers. That's so frustrating. So I'm wondering now, I'm starting to question, if Drew really will beat Brock Lesnar. And I'm also starting to question and wonder if WWE is not going to let the coronavirus affect the decisions that they've already made. Because for most of these matches, WWE probably has a general idea what direction they want to go. And is the virus going to affect the booking decisions? If they don't, then Drew can still win the belt here and all is right with the world. But WWE might want to, say, well, until this shit stops, maybe we'll have Brock retain here. And then if we get a handle on the virus and life goes back to normal, maybe we can do the rematch at SummerSlam, give Drew McIntyre the moment there. They might think that. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, but that might be something that's in their head. So keep that in mind, for WrestleMania. And again, the funny thing is we'll know sooner than later, because if you do want to search out the spoilers, they probably will be available this week. Also on the Raw side of things, we got Becky Lynch and Shayna Baszler. Same thing here. Almost the same thing applies with Shayna and Becky. Do they change their initial plan here? Was Shayna set to beat Becky for the title? Because you got to remember, Becky won that belt in grand fashion. Last year, main event, pinning Ronda Rousey, well, pinning her, sort of, and she's been champ for a year. Is that how you want to end this reign? Is that how you want to take the belt off of Becky after a year, after her winning it the way she did? You want to do it in this empty arena atmosphere? And again, if WWE doesn't plan on letting the coronavirus affect their decisions and their booking, then Shayna might be dethroning Becky here. But I still don't know what direction that match is going to go in. I feel like some people have got to retain their belts. They can't all drop them. So You mean to tell me Drew's going to beat Brock, Shayna's going to beat Becky for the title, Rhea's going to beat Charlotte, and Roman's going to beat Goldberg? Well, I guess Rhea would retain if she beat Charlotte. So Charlotte's going to beat Rhea then? You have all these belts, change hands. Somebody's got to retain. Bayley, I'm hoping, retains in the six-pack challenge. Maybe Rhea retains against Charlotte. And then you can have the title changes be Roman, Becky, and McIntyre. So I don't know. We'll see. We, of course, also have, like I said, the Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte match. They interviewed Charlotte right after they showed the replay of the WrestleMania match backstage. Don't even know what she said other than I'm going to win and I'm the best. And I already put an end to one streak and I'm going to end Rhea Ripley or whatever. So as of right now, I think Charlotte was one that I was leaning towards in terms of outcomes that might not please the fans. I think that NXT and this is all prior to the pandemic, so things could change here. Assuming this pandemic never happened, I was kind of wondering if WWE wanted to just put a couple of people in NXT. And if Charlotte did beat Rhea Ripley, it's not going to be like the end of the world. It's not going to be like, oh, Charlotte's going to be in NXT for the next 3 years now. I think if she was going to beat Rhea Ripley, she'd go back to NXT for a short run. 2-3 months, drop the belt, come back. Just to give them maybe a little boost, a little extra shot in the arm, some other talent to maybe compete a little bit with the ratings in AEW. We've heard stories about Triple H trying to do things to kind of lighten the mood a little bit on NXT because AEW is doing a really good job of balancing wrestling and comedy and lighthearted stuff where NXT feels a little bit more serious. The Broserweights have really helped pump a little bit more, fun into the show, but maybe they need more. And so if you start changing up the way the show is produced just a little bit to give it a little bit more of a pro wrestling show type of feel, adding a piece of talent or two like a Charlotte or, maybe like a male competitor or two, I think could also help NXT, and it would not be permanent. So it might not be the worst thing in the world for Charlotte to win the match and then give the belt back to Rhea in NXT. Rhea can win that, and then you could even do a rubber match after that. Who knows? So I was kind of open to Charlotte kind of taking the title. It felt like she probably would at this point over Rhea, even though I'm madly in love with Rhea Ripley. I feel like Charlotte has got the best chance there of pulling off that victory. So we'll see. And again, the pandemic has a lot to do with it. Randy Orton and Edge, same thing. I'm not too concerned about this outcome. That's got to be Edge all the way. I don't think he's going to come back after 9 years and lose. Has anybody ever done that? Come back after 9 years and drop their match? When The Rock came back, he beat Cena. When Hogan came back, he beat whoever he beat. So, actually, no. Hogan lost to The Rock. Yeah, so Hogan did. But at least he was wrestling. He was in WCW, where Edge and The Rock were out of the ring completely. So I'm not thinking that's going to go any other way other than Edge getting full revenge for Randy Orton nearly crippling him and beating up his wife. You can't get your wife beat up and then lose to the guy. It's not the way it works. So Edge, I think for sure, will beat Randy Orton. Devlin Husband, man, what's up, man? Thanks for the $2. Man, I need this after my day. Thank you, Greg. I hope everything went well with you. I know we were exchanging DMs yesterday and today about you hitting the store and trying to hunker down and get some supplies because Hawaii might be going in lockdown as well. What did Daniel say about Brock? First reign, 84 days. Second title, 119 days. Third title, 150 days. Okay, that was his first stint. Well, maybe it's longer than I thought. It felt like his title. You were there for one of them. I didn't see the match where it changed hands. Didn't he drop it at the Iron Man match or something in Raleigh? I wasn't there. I forgot how that happened. And I forgot what happened at SummerSlam, too. Wasn't it a cage match? Brock and Angle and Vince was involved. I don't remember who was champion in that and who won. I guess Brock was champ and he dropped the belt? Is that how it worked? I don't remember. Point is, Brock has been awfully dominant, and he's been on top for a long time in the country, or in the company. Oh, yes, thank you, Barry. Stone Cold came back and lost to The Rock, but that was 9 months. I'm talking 9 years here. I'm talking like a long, long, long stint away from the company. Generally, you're not going to be losing a match like that. Coming back after all that time. But, Austin was kind of a different story because he left WWE in bad terms. He should come back and do the job. He should come back and mend fences. And I felt the same way about Hogan. It was funny how Hogan was all about playing nice in 2002. You know, he came back in all humbled. You know, he wasn't that "it doesn't work for me, brother" guy in 2002. He was doing jobs for everybody. He jobbed to The Rock at WrestleMania. He jobbed to Brock Lesnar. Kurt Angle tapped him out at a pay-per-view. Hogan tapping out. How many times have we seen that? So he was doing business in 2002. It wasn't until after the Mr. America thing came and went, and he left the company and came back in 2005, then all of a sudden he's an asshole again. He insists on beating Shawn, insists on beating Randy Orton. Fuck that guy. And Vince did it. It's not even Hulk's fault. It's Vince's fault for doing that. I don't know what he was thinking, beating two of your best stars like that with that old fart. But anywho, that's kind of the way it goes sometimes. What else we got for WrestleMania? We had the tag team match that was announced. Andrade and Angel Garza taking on the Street Profits for the Raw tag team titles. Don't see any reason there for the Street Profits to drop those belts. I think that's going to be more of a way to set up some sort of an angle between Garza and Andrade, potentially even having Zelina be put in the middle, having to choose between the two of them, or hell, maybe you can stick Zelina up on a pole and the winner gets her. I don't know. But I think my gut tells me that is the beginning of, you know, something between the two of them. But they were pretty impressive tonight against Ricochet and Cedric. It was a really good match. We also have Aleister Black taking on Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania. Random. Did they set that up on TV at all? I don't even remember those two guys doing anything together on Raw. Maybe they did one segment, but not that I can remember. So that match came out of left field. Okay, Lashley versus Aleister Black. Black better win that. I hope he beats Lashley, because I don't want to see any sort of stalling in the rise of Aleister Black. I think that dude's money, and I think WWE should start pushing him accordingly. And it felt like they were starting to do that, you know, a little bit. He was, you know, given a winning streak, even when he lost that match a couple of weeks ago to AJ Styles. It took 3 guys to do it. So they're doing a pretty good job of protecting Aleister at the moment. I'd hate to see him drop a match to Lashley right now. Not that Lashley's not a credible opponent. He's just not an opponent that does anything for anyone, you know? Between the two, I think we can all agree Aleister feels like he's got more potential there. We also have Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens. That was made official, I think, last week, and then they've got some other stipulation going on. In that match, we have Goldberg defending the Universal title against Roman Reigns. We'll talk about that match more this week. They did the contract signing on Friday, very fast contract signing. I was wondering if they were going to touch on the Georgia and Georgia Tech history between those two. They did that a little bit with Roman calling Goldberg a bulldog bitch, which was pretty funny. But again, this match better be 5 minutes maximum. 5 minutes is on the long end of things. I'm thinking 3. I want Roman to end this thing relatively quickly. It does not have to be a squash or anything, but I think it needs to end quick. This match cannot be good. Roman is going to give Goldberg a better match than The Undertaker did, and probably better than Bray Wyatt did, but still, I don't know. This match, what if Goldberg beats him? How crazy would that be? That might be WWE's big plan too. Maybe they plan to have Goldberg beat Roman, just a little reverse psychology, to have the fans all mad that Roman didn't win a match, because that's what would happen. You realize that, right? At WrestleMania, if Goldberg beats Roman Reigns, every single fan that says Roman Reigns is a cancer to the company, he's the worst thing ever, and all Vince does is suck his dick, if he loses to Goldberg, the fans are going to be pissed that he didn't win. But if he does win, then fans are going to say, oh, see, Vince goes right back to Roman. They're fucked in this match no matter what they do here. They are so screwed in terms of the fans. They're going to complain about this regardless. But I think it would be funny to troll him a little bit and maybe have Goldberg beat Roman, just to watch everybody freak out. WWE might like to see that. See, look, all the fans want us to push Roman. They're all saying it right now. They're all mad at us. Okay, so we'll push him. As soon as we get back to business, we'll give him the title at SummerSlam. Who knows? That could be something they could do. I hope they have a little bit of fun with that match, because right now it just seems way too straightforward and way too predictable. I mentioned Bayley's six-pack challenge. That was made this past week on SmackDown with Paige. Paige was put in charge of announcing to Bayley that she's going to be taking on Dana Brooke, Naomi, Tamina, somebody else, and Sasha Banks. So it's going to be a big six-pack challenge there. Bayley should probably retain there and maybe stretch out her and Sasha as long as you can. I think normally SummerSlam would be way too far. You'd never be able to stretch that angle out that far. WWE doesn't have that ability to book that long term, but in the face of this virus, that might be something they can hold off on here, especially if Bayley gets the pin on Sasha, how do the six-pack challenges work? It's just one fall, right? It's not an elimination, right? Might be an elimination. I don't think it's an elimination, but if it's an elimination, I think regardless if it's an elimination or not, Bayley needs to pin Sasha. I think that'll be fun. She would retain, and it sets up a big match and tension between the two of them because they're besties right now. So if Bayley wins, she can have the argument, well, hey, what did you expect me to do? So they can kind of remain friends a little bit, but there's going to be animosity there. It's going to boil over, and then it can lead to a future pay-per-view match whenever we get our lives back. So I got to pick Bayley to kind of retain there. Miz and Morrison have not announced their opponents yet, right? We don't know who it's going to be. They did the funny skit, the dirt sheet on Friday, where they dressed as Bacon and they dressed as the New Day and everything. That'll probably get worked out in the taping, and we'll see that on Fox on Friday. But that could be a multi-team deal too. The fact that they're dressing up as all the teams, the Usos, the New Day, and Heavy Machinery, it might be a multi-team deal there. And you could have Otis do double duty. We saw that on SmackDown. He was confronted again by Ziggler, and he's showing the pics of him and Mandy on the screen there. So I don't know if they're going to do that. I think they should do that. I think they should do one-on-one Otis and Dolph Ziggler. And I had mentioned weeks ago that whatever the final product there is, I want to see some sort of a Randy Savage and Elizabeth moment like at WrestleMania 7 between Otis and Mandy, some big embrace, but that's all going to be lost now because it's going to be in an empty arena. But if that was in front of an audience of 80,000 people, could you imagine that moment? Because that's one thing about WWE creatively that they're doing really well. They are doing an excellent job of creating sympathy for Otis. Most of the fans think this whole angle has been executed relatively well for today's standards and the way WWE does things and overproduces everything and makes it look like vomit. This has been pretty good, and you really feel for Otis. He's entertaining as hell. Everybody is on the side of Otis. So we all want to see that. I just think that would be a great, glorious moment. Give those two the Savage and Liz moment. Not the Sherry and Savage moment where Sherry's beating his ass, but give them a nice moment. Finally, Otis gets his payback. Maybe it can even be some sort of a ploy. Maybe they're fucking with Ziggler. Maybe it's like a double swerve. Maybe Otis is like this could double turn. Maybe Otis and Mandy are in on this to begin with, and it was a ploy to lure Dolph Ziggler in, and then they kick his ass because Mandy is jaded, so she went along with the charade to get Ziggler in this position because he did her wrong in some past life, and then her and Otis, put Ziggler down. I don't think it'll be like that. I think Otis is just too much of a fan favorite, and he's way too over for that, but I just think there needs to be some sort of a hug or some sort of a kiss or some sort of an embrace between the two, and we can all cry and all that shit, but with the pandemic, I might want to hold out on that. I want to see Otis get his moment and a bunch of people cheering. I want to see women in the front row crying. You know what I mean? So I just don't feel like you can get that now at WrestleMania. So I'm curious if Otis is going to be involved in some sort of a tag team title match or if it's going to be one-on-one and it's going to be against Dolph Ziggler with maybe Mandy in the corner, neutral corner or something like that. And I don't know how Mandy is going to kind of come around. She needs to be clued in that Dolph is a douche. I don't know how you can walk around with somebody who dresses like that and not know he's a douchebag, but maybe Dolph gets stuck in some sort of a GTV situation where he's talking about using Mandy or something like that, and he's video recorded, and then Mandy sees it, and then she's like, oh yeah, and then she knows it, but doesn't tell Dolph. And then she goes to ringside with him, knowing this information, and then turns on him and has the big embrace with Otis. Could be something like that. Either way, Otis has to have his day, whether he wins the tag team titles with his buddy Tucker or if he puts Ziggler down and wins the honor of Mandy Rose. Either way, I want Otis to have a good day at WrestleMania. It's what we need. We as fans need this. We're all stuck in our house. We're all dealing with this global virus. We're all freaking out. We need something to smile at. So give us Otis and Mandy. Just don't show us what happens in the hotel room after, please. I'm begging you. Probably also going to get Sami Zayn versus Daniel Bryan. I think Gulak has got to face Shinsuke this week on SmackDown. And if Gulak wins, Daniel Bryan gets a title shot against Sami Zayn at WrestleMania. Now, I like this because I think Daniel Bryan is helping position Gulak to be there when he leaves. Brie is pregnant. When she has the kid, Daniel's going to be taking some time off, probably a couple months. So positioning Gulak, kind of in a new role, I think could be a really good thing to do. And so if you have Daniel Bryan maybe defeat Sami Zayn, he can eventually have another match with Gulak, because there's no way that issue is resolved. They had the match at Elimination Chamber. The next night, Daniel Bryan says, you know what, Gulak, you're right. All your silly PowerPoint presentations, I should have listened to you. Will you please coach me? The guy that he defeated, he's now, groveling at the feet to show him the way and show me what I was doing wrong. And Gulak is training him after they won their tag match on SmackDown last week. They're in the back, and Gulak is like, yeah, breathe deep, stretch deep. And he's teaching Daniel Bryan to do stretches and yoga and shit. Daniel Bryan's eating it up. Sammy's mad because Daniel Bryan didn't take his advice and he took Gulak's instead. So maybe this whole thing is going to lead to one final encounter between Daniel Bryan and Gulak. This time there's going to be a title on the line, and Gulak's going to get his win back, and Gulak can be Intercontinental Champion. I'd be fine with that. I don't want it to be anywhere near Braun Strowman, that big dumb bastard, what he said last week and blocked me on Twitter for giving him shit. I'm so glad the belt is off Braun Strowman. And guess who doesn't have a match at WrestleMania? Mr. I got $150 in my pocket and a Kia Soul. You're off the card, big man, unless they shoehorn you in here last minute on SmackDown. But I think that could be a good way to go. Have the Intercontinental title be around the waist of somebody like that. Shinsuke had a good run with it. Sammy now is not really in the ring. Sammy's pulling a Shawn Michaels in 1994. He's just not wrestling for some reason. And he's Intercontinental Champion now. So if it's on Sammy, if it's on Bryan, if it's on Gulak, I'm fine with that. And I kind of hope that that's where the belt stays, at least for the meantime. But in the end, I guess I really don't care. I hate that belt. It's so ugly. That's the way it's supposed to look, right behind me. Ugly damn belt. What am I missing on the WrestleMania card? Because that's all I wrote down, and I only went by memory here. I guess I could look myself, huh? I got a computer. I got a working mouse. And how do you think they're going to divide up the matches? Like I said earlier, are they going to do it brand by brand or mix them or whatever the fuck? Let's make sure I'm not missing any WrestleMania matches here. I'm going to pull up WWE.com and just pull up their preview for Mania. Here we go. Oh, yeah. John Cena and The Fiend. Forgot to talk about that one. Kind of a big one. What else did I miss other than that? No, that's it. Just John Cena and The Fiend. I thought the last time they interacted in the ring on SmackDown was pretty good. That was one thing that I thought that worked well in the empty arena, was the Bray Wyatt and John Cena promo on SmackDown last week, the week before last, whenever that was. That was all right. But as far as the match goes, there can only be one winner here, too. Along with Randy Orton and Edge, this is another one that I'm almost certain has got to be Bray Wyatt. I really would be surprised if if they spend all this money and time and energy repackaging this guy, creating this character, getting it over. You've already shot it in the head when you did what you did in the Goldberg match, and now to have John Cena beat him, you're just going to bury this guy forever, and the Fiend may be no more. So the only way the Fiend character survives, I think, in the WWE is if he defeats John Cena. And based on the way John Cena talks now, he was on TV saying WrestleMania should go on without me and all that shit. So based on that, Cena should want to put this guy over. Cena should want to give Bray Wyatt the win back from WrestleMania 30. A lot of fans were very upset about that WrestleMania match. And I understood. I was maybe a little bit more understanding of that one than I was like the Charlotte and Asuka one. I thought fans were freaking out way too hard about that. But looking back, that was a match that was 2 years in a row that John Cena did that. He defeated Bray Wyatt, who was really getting on a roll, really getting over. And then he defeated Rusev the next year, who was also getting on a roll. I think he was undefeated and he was looking unstoppable. And then both of these guys run into Cena. Next thing you know, they're complete jokes on TV. So I would hate for this entire year-long process of this resurrection of Bray Wyatt, this brand new character, to first be hit by Goldberg, then be hit by Cena. I don't see any way WWE does that, and it's got to be Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt's got to win. There's no other way around that. So anyway, that's pretty much WrestleMania, unless I'm missing anything. I'll check what you guys had to say here in the chat. Oh, I don't know, Brian. I don't know if I've seen Brian and Gulak on Twitter. That's pretty funny. Daniel, what'd you say? This whole event feels like a bunch of DQs and screw finishes. I hope not. I don't think it's going to be that many. You might have a couple, but there's some of the stipulations are going to prevent you from even having those finishes. I cannot imagine Vince wanting to show footage from this event in the future. He loves showing the large crowds, not this. Yes, I agree completely, but I think this is also going to be a time that we will look back on and say, this is the time that we all had to kind of come together, sort of thing. So yeah, it's not ideal as far as like what WWE wants to showcase. I don't think they should be replaying this WrestleMania on ESPN one day in the future, or if the pandemic continues into a couple of months and ESPN's still looking for content, don't play this one. So I completely agree with you there. But I think depending on when all of this ends, kind of like 9/11, they still talk about that 9/11 SmackDown, and how it, kind of changed the world. So I think this will be looked back on as a special WrestleMania, a different WrestleMania, one that looked like no other. And that reminds me, I'm wondering, and I thought about this in terms of the Royal Rumble, with WWE now moving the event to a 2-day event, and they are exhaustingly shoving that a ridiculous slogan up our ass. Too big for one night. Oh, F off, WWE. Stop saying that. Why don't you? I mean, they haven't really even acknowledged that there's a problem in the world. Do you realize that? They don't talk about the coronavirus. They don't talk about anything really on Raw. They just make it look like it's business as usual. Just the fans forgot to show up. So this too big for one night bullshit, the slogan should be, we're fucked. This is what we're deciding to do. We have to do it this way. So I'm curious now, with it going to 2 nights, and the day that was announced on Twitter, Wrestle Kingdom was trending harder than WrestleMania, just based on that announcement. So you have to wonder if maybe this is going to be the beginning now in future years, and next year in LA, it might be a 2-day event from here on out. And it reminded me of the Royal Rumble in '92 when they did the Hogan Taker match Tuesday in Texas. Hogan won the belt. Tunney stripped him. Belt is vacated. It's going to be held up. Winner of the Royal Rumble gets the belt. Well, previously in the Royal Rumble, there were no prizes. There was just bragging rights. Winners share the purse. 89, 90, 91. The winner just won. Stud and Hogan just won. Hacksaw won it on the USA Network. But there was nothing else other than, here's your winner, Hulk Hogan. Well, once they put the belt on the line, you can't go back to the way it was the following year. From there on out, by them holding up that belt at the Royal Rumble in '92, that forced them to have to put something else on the line in future Royal Rumbles. Otherwise, what's the point? You know what I mean? So that's where the winner gets the title shot was at WrestleMania was born. It was born at Royal Rumble 1993, the following year, because they couldn't really go back to the other way. So I'm wondering if WrestleMania is on 2 nights, if this is serving 2 purposes. Number 1, to kind of deal with the pandemic, and number 2, for WWE to see how it goes, to see if they like it. I know you can't really compare this product to what we're going to see when things are normal, but maybe they're going to just kind of test that, because there's been talk now. How many years do you think that we've been talking about it on this channel? I'd say 5. I'd say at least 5 years now. Somebody every year will at least bring up to me once, Greg, do you think WrestleMania will one day be a 2-day event? And I've always been open to it. I prefer it to be one event, I think, but when they've been getting so over the top and ridiculous with how much time is going by, that one year was like 8 hours long if you counted the pre-show. It's like way too much. So you have that crowd there, they're getting burnt out. Maybe if you spread it out over 2 days, it gives the fans a chance to go back to the hotel, catch a breather, and come back. And if they're all there for the entire weekend anyway, it's feasible. It's plausible you could do something like that, because fans just don't travel to WrestleMania and go to that one show. They're going to Access, they're going to Hall of Fame, they're doing a bunch of things anyway. So readjusting your schedule, I don't know where that would leave TakeOver and the Hall of Fame and things like that, but it could be something they do in the future if they start making these super cards, especially, if they're putting like NXT titles on the line. You got to remember, the NXT women's title is going to be defended at WrestleMania for the first time ever. And now you got a third brand that you can have an attraction match. So that just adds more. So now we're getting to the point where if there was not a pandemic, we would have had a 15 match card for this show. That's a lot. That's a lot of shit, especially when you combine all the entrances and all the bullshit they do in between. You're really stretching out these shows. So this could be the beginning of what's to come. In the future, we might see WrestleMania split into 2 days. And I've kind of been on the fence about it. I haven't been totally against the idea, but I think I'm leaning more towards just wanting it to stay the way it is. But Wrestle Kingdom pulls it off. They had a great... I watched both nights of the event. I even watched the night after with Jushin Liger's amazing retirement ceremony, and all that was great. So I think a 2-day WrestleMania could work, but if WWE for any reason allowed me to choose and decide if they were going to do that, I'd say no for now. But with this year being a 2-day event, and with WWE exhaustingly hammering that stupid slogan in our heads, it makes me think, I'm like, well, what are you going to do next year? This WrestleMania is too big for one night. Does that mean next year's is not too big? WrestleMania is the granddaddy of them all, right? It's the biggest spectacle. It's the biggest show. So what are you doing? What are you saying? 37 is not as good as 36? We don't deserve 2 nights here in LA? I'm kind of thinking this might be a regular thing from now on. And it's going to be born out of this pandemic. The pandemic is going to cause WrestleMania to be a 2-night event forever. You know? And hell, by next year, we might be paying for our WrestleManias if they shop out their pay-per-views to an OTT platform or something. Who knows what it's even going to look like next year. But luckily, I'll be there, provided, who knows, a year from now, we might still be locked in our house. But if we're not, I'm going to WrestleMania. Daniel, I hope you are joining me next year in LA. Oh, thank you, Ryan Rhoda. I did forget Corbin and Elias. Baron Corbin against Elias has also been set. Our good old friend Rob Gronkowski made that match, or at least advocated for that match last week on SmackDown. I don't know what he was doing with his entrance theme there. You see, I got a response from Hangman Page today on Twitter. He said, he goes, I haven't tweeted in a week. What's my punishment? And I said, you have to watch Gronk's entrance from SmackDown on a 2-hour loop while eating a warm bowl of yogurt, a gallon of warm yogurt, and watch his entrance for 2 hours straight. And he responded with, no, he will not do that, which is a shame. Don't knock it till you try it. Might be fun. But yeah, Rob Gronkowski coming in. I'm letting that one go because it's just WWE. I think the fans have got to realize that WWE did not bring him in for us. He's not there to appease the wrestling fan. He's not there to show us wrestling fans anything. He's there for publicity. He's just there for that, and that's it, just to bring him in for some sort of an attraction match. You've noticed they made the announcement. They've now officially moved Mojo Rawley to the SmackDown brand. So when he does have a match, which will probably be at SummerSlam, I would guess that's the internal plan, unless the virus changes things. They're probably building him up for some sort of a match at SummerSlam. So I don't know if that's going to be a tag with Mojo or against Mojo. Either way, I do not care. I do not like Rob Gronkowski. He is so fucking obnoxious. In a lot of ways, he's kind of like The Miz, sort of, you know? He's an outside guy. He's not a reality TV show star, but he's got that, like, attitude. You know, The Miz was always, like, over the top. I didn't watch the season of The Real World that The Miz was on, but I did see clips and in replays of some of the things he was doing, and he was just very over the top, very animated, very loud, very obnoxious, very into getting attention. And Rob Gronkowski is a lot like that. And, you know, who knows? Miz went on to surprise me. You know, I was advocating last year for the Miz to get another crack at the title. I think if they gave him the belt now, after all these years of improvement, I'd be much more open to Miz being champion now than I was back in 2011. So the Miz made a believer out of me after I hated the guy's guts for the first few years he was there. I'm like, who is this guy? You know? But the Miz straightened his attitude up. You know, he was kind of a little torp and a little douchebag when he first came in. Chris Benoit famously put the Miz in his place, made him change his clothes in the broom closet or something, banished him from the locker room because he spilled fried chicken on his bags. So the Miz, like, paid his dues. He learned from his mistakes. He matured as he got older, and he turned out to be a hell of a performer, and he's really good, and he's shown us some really good stuff on the mic in recent years as well. And when he's put in the right positions, not all the time, sometimes the Miz can suck, but when he's put in the right situations, he delivers, and he's somebody that you can count on. And he's been in, you know, several movies now, and he's one of the guys that WWE sends out on personal appearances, and you would never have wanted to do that with a 2005 Miz. He wasn't ready. He wasn't capable of handling something like that. So maybe Gronk's deal, I think, is a kind of a short-term thing, but if he stays around and he wants to give this wrestling thing a go, I think somebody like Gronk, the longer he's in the business, he's going to have no choice but to be a little bit more mature, you know, because I just think he's living in a 14-year-old body. He's like a frat guy that never grew up. Or doesn't have a 14-year-old body. He's living, you know, he's got the mind of a 14-year-old, I should say, or somebody like a frat dude in college that's just obnoxious and awful. So we'll see. I have no interest in seeing Rob Gronkowski in the WWE. I don't know what the hell he was doing in his entrance on SmackDown. I think the whole thing sucks, but it is what it is, and he's now the host of WrestleMania. So that's great. We're going to get to see a whole lot of Rob Gronkowski saying a whole lot of stupid shit on the mic on those 2 days of WrestleMania. But where he ranks in WrestleMania hosts, who have we had? We've had Hogan, we've had Alexa Bliss, we've had New Day. Who else has hosted WrestleMania? We had any others? So far, I'm voting him as the worst, and he hasn't even done it yet. Maybe he'll surprise me. I hope so. I missed you too, Nick Musser. What's going on, man? Good to see you. I like the Miz main event WrestleMania again one day. I know now I feel like it's not happening. Now I feel like like maybe a year ago, I was like, they should give Miz another run. But now I feel like he's farther away from that now than he was maybe a year or two ago. I thought he was almost like ready. I was open to it. I'm like, yeah, give him a shot. But we got 2 belts now. Put one of them on him. What's the difference? Can't be any worse than Jinder Mahal, right? And I think the Miz might want the opportunity to do a better job. Everybody rejected his title run in 2011. When you think about WrestleMania 27, he was the champion going into that match, and he is a forgotten player. The only people that mattered in that main event was John Cena and The Rock. The champion meant nothing, and he won that match, and most people forget that too. So he just wasn't, it wasn't the time to put the belt on him when they did. And I think if he got another run now, 9 years after the fact, 10 years after the fact, I think he would have a much better run, much more credible run that won't look back on as a failure, and we won't look back and poke fun at, you know what I mean? So we'll see. We'll see what the future holds. But right now he's back with Morrison, and they're pretty damn entertaining together, and I'm fine with them in the role that he's currently in. So that is all for my notes here. I do want to mention this as well. Tomorrow night, part 2, I think, is going to be released on YouTube, on Vice channel, on the Vice YouTube channel of the Chris Benoit documentary. And I also think it airs on TV starting tomorrow as well. Maybe part 1 and then part 2 comes later, but part 1 has already been online. So from what I heard, part 2, you can find that online tomorrow, but I got an advance copy of that. I got an advance link, and I watched it, was it yesterday? I watched it Saturday night, I think. Really late on Saturday night. The link is now dead. If I had it, I would give it to you or share it with you. But I watched the second part, and if you thought the first part was fucked up, oh my God, buckle up. Because they touched on things that I had no idea about. There were some very disturbing facts coming through, when they really talked about the murders themselves. There was a lot of photos, not of the bodies or anything, but there's a lot of photos of the home from the crime scene and a lot of very strange things. And one of the things that stuck a dagger in my heart was when they talked about what they found on the search history of Benoit's computer after he killed Nancy and Daniel, and some of the things he was looking up. One of them includes he was looking up a Bible passage on how to resurrect a little boy. And he was also looking up the fastest way to break your own neck, and a couple of other things that were just gnarly. So it's just so unbelievable, man. It was one of those things, both part 1 and 2, when I was done, I literally sat there in stone silence for like 5 minutes before I could even move, just kind of like reflecting and taking it all in. I'm like, holy shit, man. It's just, it was so bad. I mean, it was so bad. And I mentioned too, in part 1, when I talked about that on Saturday, I think it was on Saturday, when I talked about me watching part 1, this was prior to me seeing part 2, and I talked about how effed up it was when Chris Jericho was telling the story about Eddie Guerrero's funeral and how much that bothered Benoit and how devastated he was. I mean, he was just an emotional wreck. And plus, you combine with what was probably going on in his head at the time, he was not in a good place and he wasn't handling it well, and he was absolutely devastated, and he had to go to the funeral, and then all the WWE guys had to leave early so they could hop a flight to go on a European tour, and he had no business being on that thing. And, I just think that, like, looking back, if you could go back and change, time, there's so many things I would do differently. And I think that had things been dealt with properly, Benoit still would have had the problems he had, but maybe Nancy and Daniel would still be here. I think that if Benoit was still alive, he would have dementia today. That was 13 years ago. His brain was a bowl of liquid shit when they analyzed it, and it had so much damage. So had he remained alive, he'd probably be having some serious, serious mental problems right now. But Nancy and Daniel would still be with us, and Benoit would be in a bad way, and it would be horrible to see that. It would be heartbreaking to see, but at least, he wouldn't have committed those crimes. And just how cold-blooded he was to do that and then hang around in the house for 2 days after the fact before he decided to kill himself. Like, what the hell was going on in his head, It's so crazy. So anyway, proceed at your own risk when part 2 comes out. It's pretty crazy. So yeah, not the greatest thing to really watch right now in the middle of this pandemic. It was awfully depressing, but it was also very informative. And I like it when, a channel like Vice, they're not gonna have any like revisionist history. They're not trying to paint this one way, like the WWE would. They're out there telling the truth, and they've got his friends and family out there, talking about the situation. Nancy's sister was extensively interviewed in this thing, and she talked about when she heard the news. I was in the movie theater and I got 22 missed calls from my parents, and then they told me, and I had to be sedated and taken to the hospital because she completely flipped out. This was like horrible, devastating news to everybody, and your heart just breaks for David, Chris's living son, who, now is a young man who is a spitting image of his old man, looks exactly like Benoit. He's got to look in the mirror every day and see the face of a killer, and he's got to carry this with him. He loved Nancy. He didn't even call Nancy his stepmom. He called her his mom. He lost his mom and his brother and his dad, in those horrible circumstances. And you got to wonder, you got to fear for this kid's, mental capacity as he gets older, to constantly have that on you and weighing on you. I don't want him to turn into Scott Hall. Scott Hall had that situation where he killed the guy in the parking lot of the nightclub, and it was probably a really huge contributing factor to a lot of the personal demons that he had, because he was never able to get the help. He was never able to properly deal with taking somebody's life. And he just had to carry that with him, so you see things like that, and you just hope that David has got people in his life and he's got people around him that can keep him on the right track, because it would be really easy, for him just to kind of fall into a life of alcohol or drugs or depression, based on, what his dad did to him. His dad, not only did his father, take away his stepmother and his little brother, his father left him carrying this whole thing with him, and I even mentioned, I'm like, what would have happened if David would have been in that house? He'd be another victim. Benoit would have done them all. So he's lucky to be alive, I suppose. But at the same time, he now has to live with that. Can you imagine carrying that around? Just imagine your own dad killing your mom and your brother or your sister or something like that. And then you have to live with that uncertainty. You have to live with that. I'll never know what was going on. I'll never know what was going on in his head. I'll never be able to be inside that house to get any sort of an explanation. All we have is 3 bodies and what the police have determined happened here. But why did it happen? What the fuck, man? So it's awful, man. It's not any easier to deal with. And it's been like 14 years now since those tragedies, or 13 years. So yeah, it's bad. So anyway, you'll get a chance to see that this week. It's not fun, and good luck to everybody who watches that. Anywho, all right, we got about 250 folks in here. The likes are shit, though. Can you guys hook me up with a like? I'd super appreciate it. As far as my schedule for the rest of this week goes, I'm not 100% sure. Let me go back up here and make sure I got no other super chats. Nope, I don't. Not 100% sure what my schedule is going to be like for the rest of this week. I've got some stuff going on. I will be up here on Saturday, of course, for the Winged Eagle. And I'm sure, based on the fact that I'm quarantined, you are going to see me this week doing some sort of a live stream. Like I said, though, I'm not going to want to get into WrestleMania spoilers, but I can probably find something else to come up here and talk about this week. So expect to see me. I just don't know when. Maybe on Thursday, after Dynamite and NXT. Apparently, WWE will not be running a clip show this week for NXT. They have taped some matches for that, so NXT will be somewhat back to normal. It'll just be in an empty arena. And AEW has postponed Blood and Guts. We're not going to get that. They felt that it wasn't appropriate to hold a match like that, and they're right. I'm glad they postponed that. And instead, we're going to get a one-on-one in-ring confrontation between Matt Hardy and Chris Jericho. So Dynamite should be interesting this week. We'll see. I'll be up here live tweeting on Wednesday, so feel free to join me. And yeah, I'll try to come up, the next day or something, and we'll discuss that. And then we'll talk more about WrestleMania and everything. So that's pretty much going to be it for me. Let me go back over here and say goodbye to y'all. Make sure there's nothing else in here I need to talk about or answer. Vice made it sound like Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit had a thing going on. I don't think they did. What do you mean a thing going on? I hope it's not what you mean, like a romantic thing. Haven't you ever had a bromance? They exist. Haven't you ever had a friend? There's nothing. That's ludicrous, but whatever. They were very, very, very close friends. They traveled all over the world together wrestling. When you're on the road that much as a wrestler, they become your family. Benoit and Eddie, they weren't friends. They were brothers, It goes deeper, It's not just about who has the same DNA as you. Your family is who you choose. My best friends back in North Carolina, Ashley and Daniel, who's in the chat now, they're my family. These people are your family. So that's all it was there. There's nothing weird going on there. Yeah, but when you watch when you watch the rest of it, you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll see what I'm talking about. Yeah, and the Owen Hart one is coming up. My God. Martha, I saw a clip there. Martha was interviewed, so they got her on board for this thing. So they're much like the Benoit episode. I think the Owen episode is going to touch on things that we didn't know about. And Benoit, a lot of it already did, but a lot of it I didn't. And the same is probably going to be true for the Owen Hart episode. We're going to hear little tiny details here that are going to be, number one, new that we never knew, and number two, they're going to be heartbreaking, because they're probably going to tell the story of, how his kids have coped with this and the night that Martha found out and shit like that. AEW did a documentary on it like 15, 20 years ago. But aside from that, we haven't heard a lot of these really in-depth details. And have you guys ever seen Oj? Have you seen Owen Hart's son? Looks exactly like him. Much like David looks like Chris, Oj looks exactly like Owen to just a scary degree. Spitting image. Unbelievable. But anyway, that's going to be a crazy one to watch too. They're all going to be good. I'm going to watch them all. I don't know what order they're being released in, and I don't know where Owen Hart is going to fall. But that's probably the one, aside from Benoit, that I'm the most interested in seeing. So anyway, that's a wrap for me tonight. We went about an hour and a half here in this stream. I appreciate you guys hanging out. Once again, please just take care of yourselves. Hope you're all doing well during these tough times. In the meantime, check out my channel. Shitload of content on there right now. A lot of WrestleMania-related content. I've got a lot of pay-per-view reviews and things like that I've done this year. I've got a top 10 WrestleMania countdown. Last night we talked for 2.5 hours about WrestleMania 10, 11, and 12. I talked about The Rock and Hulk Hogan's match at 18 last week. All sorts of good stuff on the channel, so make sure you head on over there and subscribe and shoot me a follow on social media. We are really close to 5,000 followers on Twitter. I think I need about 25 or 30 more followers, and we'll be there. So if you are on that site and that platform, head on over there and follow me. And if you've already followed me, do me a favor, create 25 fake accounts and follow me on all those too. I'd appreciate it. You guys have a great rest of your night, and I'll catch you in just a couple of days. Be good. Peace.